The arrival of the Earth diplomatic vessel transformed Kepler Station from a quiet research facility into the center of galactic attention. Dr. Sarah Chun watched through the observation deck as three massive ships took position around the asteroid. The sleek silver diplomatic cruiser from Earth, the angular warship representing the Independent Colonies Alliance, and most surprisingly, a vessel unlike anything in the databases, a dragon ship. "I never thought I'd see one of those," Marcus whispered, staring at the organic-looking craft that seemed to breathe rather than simply float in space. Emma pressed her face against the viewing port, practically bouncing with excitement. "That's Uncle Vailthan's ship. He came." Inside Cell Block 7, Kelthar had been watching the arrivals with growing intensity. When the dragon ship appeared, he threw back his massive head and released a sound that had never been heard in the facility. A song of pure joy that resonated through the station's hull. "Sir, we're receiving multiple requests for docking clearance," the communications officer announced over the intercom. Admiral Morrison appeared on the main display, looking significantly less comfortable than he had during their previous conversation. "Dr. Chun, you're about to receive some very important visitors. The diplomatic immunity codes are already in the system." Within hours, Cell Block 7's observation deck was crowded with figures who rarely appeared in the same room together. Ambassador Elena Vasquez from Earth stood next to Commissioner Thorne from the Independent Colonies, while Admiral Morrison himself had arrived to oversee the proceedings, but the most striking figure was the dragon who had somehow managed to fit through the station's corridors. Vailthan was smaller than Kelthar, but no less impressive, his scales shifting between deep blue and silver as he moved. When he saw his brother through the containment barrier, both dragons touched their foreheads against the transparent aluminum and hummed, a harmony that made the station's walls vibrate. "The family resemblance is remarkable," Ambassador Vasquez observed, watching Emma hug Vailthan's massive forearm. "Uncle Vailthan taught me to fly," Emma explained proudly. "Well, sort of fly. Dragons can carry humans safely if they trust them completely." Commissioner Thorne consulted his tablet. "The evidence you've provided, Miss Sato, has prompted us to review every engagement of the Dragon Wars. The picture that's emerging is ... troubling. The Coalition systematically misrepresented defensive actions as aggressive attacks." Admiral Morrison added, his expression grim. "What we classified as dragon raids were actually rescue operations and evacuation efforts." Vailthan spoke for the first time, his voice a deep rumble that the station's translation systems converted into precise, formal language. "My brother Kelthar was named Guardian of Orphans by our clan council. It was his sacred duty to protect any young life he encountered, regardless of species." "The refugee convoy incident," Ambassador Vasquez continued, reading from an official report. "We now have testimony from 17 survivors who were rescued by dragons and safely delivered to human settlements, even while Coalition forces were actively hunting the dragon clans." Emma walked to the containment barrier where Kelthar waited patiently. "Dad saved 847 humans during the war. I have all their names." She pulled out her datapad, and the numbers began scrolling on everyone's screens. Name after name, testimony after testimony, all documenting the same pattern: dragons risking their lives to protect human civilians while being hunted as monsters. "This changes the legal framework entirely," Commissioner Thorne announced. "The Galactic Council's War Crimes Tribunal was based on incomplete and deliberately falsified intelligence." Admiral Morrison stepped forward. "Kelthar, by the authority vested in me by the Earth Defense Council and the Independent Colonies Alliance, I hereby rescind your designation as a war criminal. All charges against you are dropped, and you are free to go." The containment barriers powered down with a series of electronic chimes. For the first time in months, nothing stood between Kelthar and the rest of the galaxy except empty air. The massive dragon stepped through the barrier opening with infinite care, as if he couldn't quite believe he was free, his burning eyes fixed on Emma as she ran to him without hesitation. Kelthar lowered his great head and gently nuzzled his daughter, making soft crooning sounds that needed no translation. "There's more," Ambassador Vasquez said. Based on Miss Sato's testimony and the evidence provided by the Dragon clans, Earth is formally requesting that the Galactic Council open a full investigation into Coalition conduct during the Dragon Wars. Vailthan moved to stand beside his brother. The Dragon clans are prepared to share our archives from the war. Every engagement, every civilian rescue, every attempt at peaceful contact that was met with violence. The implications are staggering, Dr. Yates observed. If the Dragons were the defending party in most engagements, then the Coalition committed genocide against a peaceful species that was trying to protect refugees, Emma finished matter-of-factly, and the galaxy needs to know about it. Commissioner Thorne was reviewing legal documents on his tablet. The independent colonies are prepared to offer full citizenship and protection to any Dragon clans that wish to relocate. We've also identified 17 worlds that could serve as new homelands. That's very generous, Vailthan replied formally. But the clans have already chosen our new home. Where? Admiral Morrison asked. Emma grinned. Earth. The Earth government has invited Dad's clan to establish a settlement in the Rocky Mountains. Turns out humans and dragons have very similar ideas about family and protecting people. Ambassador Vasquez smiled. The relocation ships are already being prepared. We've also established a joint research program to study dragon technology and culture. Purely voluntary, of course. Dragons have some of the most advanced biotechnology in the galaxy, Marcus said, consulting his own notes. Their ships are literally alive, their medical knowledge is centuries ahead of ours, and their understanding of energy manipulation could revolutionize civilian technology. All offered freely in exchange for a place to live in peace, Vailthan added. The Dragon clans have never been conquerors. We seek only to protect our families and help others do the same. Kelthar spoke for the first time since his release. His voice even deeper than his brother's. The translation systems rendered his words in warm, careful tones. The humans showed courage when they investigated the truth. They showed wisdom when they chose justice over convenience. The Dragon clans are honored to call Earth home. Emma looked around at the assembled dignitaries and scientists. This is just the beginning. Once the galaxy knows the truth about the Dragon Wars, everything changes. No more classifying rescue operations as attacks. No more genocide disguised as military action. What will you do now? Dr. Chen asked. I'm going to school, Emma replied with a grin. Earth has really good schools and Dad wants me to get a proper education. But first we're going home to Zarian Prime to help rebuild what was destroyed. The Coalition still controls that system, Admiral Morrison pointed out. Vailthan's scales shifted to a darker blue, and his eyes glowed brighter. Not anymore. The independent colonies have voted to establish a protective blockade around Zarian Prime until the surviving Dragon clans can rebuild their homes. And if Coalition forces resist? Commissioner Thorne asked. Emma looked up at her father, who nodded slowly. Then they'll learn why dragons fight so hard to protect their families. But they'll also learn that humans fight just as hard to protect what's right. Admiral Morrison was receiving messages on his communication device. The Galactic Council has agreed to an emergency session to review the Dragon Wars evidence. 3 member worlds have already withdrawn their support for the Coalition's military actions. Change takes time, Ambassador Vasquez observed. But when humans decide something needs to change, we tend to be very persistent about it. Humans are remarkable, Vailthan said, looking at Emma with obvious admiration. A child traveled across the galaxy alone to save her father and ended up reshaping interstellar politics. Emma shrugged modestly. I just did what any human would do. Family is family, no matter what they look like or where they come from. As the diplomatic proceedings continued, Sarah watched the reunion between father and daughter with growing understanding. This wasn't just a personal victory or even a political one. This was a demonstration of something uniquely human, the absolute refusal to abandon those they loved. Regardless of the obstacles, months later, as Sarah read reports about the dragon settlements flourishing in the Rocky Mountains and the Joint, human dragon colonies being established throughout the independent systems, She would remember this moment. The moment when a small human girl taught the galaxy that family wasn't about genetics or species, but about choosing to love and protect each other. The Dragon Wars were officially ended not by military conquest, but by an 8-year-old's determination to find her father. The peace treaty signed between the dragon clans and the human governments became known as the Sato Accords, recognizing the right of all sapient species to form families across biological boundaries. Emma Sato, now famous throughout the galaxy as the girl who ended a war by refusing to give up on her father, would eventually become the first human race. Dr. Sarah Chun had seen many impossible things during her 15 years studying xenobiology, but nothing had prepared her for watching a human child feed soup to a dragon through an energy barrier. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor of Cell Block 7's observation deck, carefully spooning nutrient paste from a standard facility meal tray. On the other side of the transparent aluminum, the massive dragon that had terrorized the station's guards for months was delicately accepting each spoonful through the small feeding aperture. He likes the chicken flavor best, Emma explained to the gathered scientists and security staff. But he'll eat anything as long as I'm here with him. Dad gets really anxious when he's alone. Sarah watched the creature that had been designated as the galaxy's most dangerous war criminal eating like a docile pet. The transformation was remarkable. The constant electromagnetic interference that had plagued the containment systems for months had ceased. The temperature in Cell Block 7 had normalized for the first time since the dragon's arrival. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Yates, the facility's chief setup psychologist, whispered. "The subject's stress indicators have dropped to levels we've never recorded. Heart rate, neural activity, hormone production, everything suggests complete calm." Emma looked up from feeding her father. "He's not a subject. His name is Kelthar. And he's calm because his family is here." "Kelthar?" Sarah repeated. "That's his name?" "It means fire who protects in the old dragon language," Emma said proudly. "Dad taught me to speak it when I was little." Marcus, who had been frantically reviewing files on his tablet, looked up with confusion. "But the war records list him as designation XK7. There's no mention of any name." Emma's expression darkened for the first time since her arrival. The Galactic Council didn't bother learning Dad's name. They just saw a dragon fighting against them and decided he was evil. Inside the cell, Kelthar made a sound that was almost like a sigh, those burning eyes fixed on Emma with such obvious affection, that even the most skeptical staff members were beginning to question everything they had been told. "About the creature, can you tell us what really happened?" Sarah asked gently. "How did you two meet?" Emma set down the feeding spoon and settled back against the wall. The dragon moved closer to the barrier, lowering himself to the floor so that his massive head was level with where she sat. "I was 6 months old when the coalition attacked the refugee convoy," Emma began, her young voice carrying a weight that no child should bear. "My parents were trying to evacuate colonists from the border worlds when the warships found us." The dragon's eyes closed, and a low rumble of what sounded like grief echoed through the containment system. "The ship I was on got hit by plasma fire," Emma continued. "It crashed on Zarian Prime and everyone aboard was killed. Everyone except me. I was in an emergency pod that got thrown clear of the wreckage." Sarah felt her stomach clench. She had read about the Zarian Prime incident in the war archives. An entire refugee convoy, thousands of civilians, wiped out in what the reports claimed was necessary military action. "Dad was living in the mountains then," Emma said. "His clan had been there for centuries before humans even knew the planet existed. When he found the crash site, he could hear me crying from inside the pod." Kelthar opened his eyes and looked at Emma with an expression that transcended species. The love between them was unmistakable. "Dragons don't usually care about other species," Emma explained to the fascinated scientists. "They keep to themselves and avoid contact with outsiders. But Dad said that when he heard me crying, something inside him just knew. He knew he had to protect me." "But the war," Dr. Yates interjected. "The records show that XK-7 Kelthar." was responsible for attacking coalition forces across 3-star systems. Emma's eyes flashed with anger, and for a moment she looked far older than her 8 years. The coalition came to Zarian Prime 6 months after Dad found me. They wanted to mine the planet's core, and they didn't care that people lived there. Marcus pulled up tactical displays on his tablet. The Battle of Zarian Prime was a major engagement. Coalition forces reported heavy resistance from indigenous hostiles. Indigenous hostiles? Emma repeated with disgust. Is that what they called Dad's family? The dragons who had lived there for 1,000 years before humans ever left Earth. Sarah was beginning to understand the true scope of what had happened. The dragons weren't invaders. They were defending their home. Dad tried to negotiate, Emma continued. He even learned human languages so he could talk to the coalition commanders. He offered to share the planet peacefully, but they said dragons were too dangerous to be allowed to live. The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the containment systems. Every person present was realizing that they had been looking at the war from only one perspective. So Dad fought back, Emma said simply. He protected his family, his home, and me. When the coalition attacked the dragon nesting grounds, Dad made sure every single ship that threatened his clan never threatened anyone again. Kelthar made a soft crooning sound and pressed one massive claw against the barrier where Emma sat. She placed her small hand against the transparent aluminum, and the gesture of connection sent a clear message to everyone watching. But the war escalated, Sarah said, understanding dawning in her voice. The coalition decided that all dragons were enemy combatants, Emma nodded. They brought in fleet after fleet to pacify the dragon worlds. Dad and the other clan leaders had to choose between extinction and fighting back. Dr. Yates was reviewing data on his scanner with growing alarm. The casualty reports. If the dragons were defending their homes, then our military estimates about their aggression levels are completely wrong. Dragons only fight when they have to, Emma explained. But when they do fight, they fight to protect everything they love. Dad wasn't a conqueror. He was a father protecting his daughter and his people. Marcus looked up from his tablet, his face pale. I'm cross-referencing the battle reports with refugee records. There are dozens of documented cases of human survivors being found safe in dragon-controlled territory, always unharmed. Dad saved lots of people during the war, Emma said proudly. Whenever he found humans who were hurt or lost, he made sure they got to safety. Even when their own military was shooting at him, Sarah felt pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. The Galactic Council has been classifying rescue operations as kidnapping incidents, and defensive actions as unprovoked attacks, Dr. Yates added. His voice thick with disgust. Emma stood up and walked to the barrier, placing both hands against it. Kelthar mirrored her gesture with infinite gentleness. When the coalition finally captured Dad, they told him I was dead. They said his failure to surrender had resulted in civilian casualties, including his human daughter. The dragon's eyes filled with something that looked remarkably like tears. Those massive shoulders shook with grief that had been carried for months. Dad stopped fighting after that, Emma whispered. He let them take him because he thought I was gone. He's been trying to die ever since because dragons don't know how to live without their family. But you're alive, Sarah said softly. How did you survive? Other dragons, Emma replied. Dad's clan scattered when the coalition launched their final assault on Zarian Prime. His brother Vailfin found me in the evacuation tunnels and got me to an independent transport heading for Earth. The implications were staggering. The coalition had won the war by capturing the Dragon Clan's most effective defender, but only because they had convinced him that his adopted daughter was dead. You crossed half the galaxy to find him, Marcus observed with obvious admiration. Emma turned away from the barrier and looked at the assembled staff with determination that belonged on someone 10 times her age. Humans don't give up on family, ever. It doesn't matter how far we have to travel or how long it takes. We find each other. The transport records, Dr. Yates said suddenly, consulting his scanner. I'm showing a passenger manifest from the Earth-Kepler route. Emma Sato, age 8, traveling alone with diplomatic credentials? Diplomatic credentials? Sarah asked. The Earth government has been investigating the war records, Emma explained matter-of-factly. When I told them what really happened, they gave me official status as a refugee witness. I'm supposed to testify to the Galactic Council about what the Coalition did to innocent dragon families. Sarah realized that this small girl represented something that terrified military commanders and politicians across the galaxy, the truth. And she had walked into the most secure facility in known space to reunite with the father who had saved her life. What happens now? Marcus asked. Emma looked back at Kelther, who was watching her with eyes full of hope for the first time in months. Now Dad gets better, and then we go home to Zarian Prime to rebuild what the war destroyed. The Galactic Council will never authorize the release of a designated war criminal, Dr. Yates said gently. Emma smiled. And for the first time since her arrival, she looked exactly like the 8-year-old girl she was. Dr. Yates, I don't think you understand something important about humans. What's that? We're really, really good at changing minds when we know we're right. And we have friends in very high places who are going to be very interested in hearing Dad's story. As if some... The containment facility on Kepler Station stretched deep into the asteroid's core, its reinforced walls humming with energy fields strong enough to hold a small star. Dr. Sarah Chun adjusted her scanner as she walked down the main corridor, trying to ignore the way the temperature dropped with each step toward the maximum security wing. Another one died last night, her assistant Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible over the facility's constant mechanical breathing. That makes 12 guards in 3 weeks. Sarah nodded grimly. She had read the reports. 12 experienced xenological containment specialists, all reduced to ash and bone fragments. The creature in Cell Block 7 had been rampaging for months now, ever since the Galactic Council had brought it here from the war zones of the Andromeda conflict. The facility housed the most dangerous beings in known space. Pirates, war criminals, and things that defied classification filled its cells. But nothing compared to what lurked behind the triple-reinforced barriers of Cell Block 7. As they approached the observation deck, Sarah could hear it before she could see it. A sound like thunder trapped in a bottle, mixed with the screech of tearing metal. The viewing window was 3 feet of transparent aluminum, designed to withstand planet-killing weapons. Through it she could see the source of the facility's terror. The dragon was magnificent and terrible. 20 feet tall even while crouched, its scales shifted between deep purple and burning gold, each one the size of a dinner plate. 4 arms ended in claws that could shred starship hulls, and its wingspan, when extended, could cover a small building. 6 eyes burned like miniature suns, and when it opened its mouth to roar, plasma fire leaked between teeth that were each as long as a human forearm. Designation XK7, Marcus read from his tablet, his hands shaking slightly. Captured during the siege of New Babylon. Classification, extreme hostile. Estimated kill count, over 4,000 Coalition soldiers. The dragon's head snapped toward the observation window, as if it had heard them. Those burning eyes fixed on Sarah, and she felt a chill run down her spine. Intelligence lurked behind that alien gaze. This wasn't just a beast. This was something that could think, plan, and hate with the fury of a dying star. Why won't it eat? Sarah asked, reviewing the feeding logs on her scanner. It refuses all food, Marcus replied. The xenobiologists think it's trying to starve itself to death. It's been 18 days since it accepted any nutrition. Sarah frowned. Suicide wasn't common among the species they typically housed. Most fought for survival with every breath, even in captivity. But this creature seemed determined to waste away rather than live in their cage. The dragon turned away from the window and resumed its endless pacing. Each step shook the reinforced floor, and the energy barriers flickered with each casual brush of its claws. The facility's most advanced containment technology was barely adequate to hold it. The Council wants answers, Marcus continued. They're threatening to have it destroyed if we can't find a way to study it safely. The research value is enormous, but not if it keeps killing our staff. Sarah was about to respond when an alarm echoed through the corridor. Not the harsh blare of a containment breach, but the gentler chime that indicated a visitor was approaching the security checkpoint. She checked her chronometer. No appointments were scheduled for today. They made their way to the main entrance, where a security guard was engaged in what appeared to be a very one-sided conversation. Standing before the massive blast doors was the smallest human Sarah had ever seen in the facility. A girl, no more than 8 years old, with dark hair and serious brown eyes. She wore a simple blue jumpsuit and carried a small backpack that looked almost as big as she was. "I need to see my dad," the girl was saying to the guard, who looked completely bewildered. "Little miss." "This is a high-security facility," the guard replied, his voice gentle but firm. "You can't just walk in here. How did you even get past the perimeter sensors?" The girl reached into her backpack and produced a data pad that looked far too advanced for a child to operate. "My authorization code is here. I'm supposed to visit today." The guard scanned the pad with his reader, then frowned. This can't be right. This code grants access to Cell Block 7. Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," the girl replied, looking up at Sarah with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "Emma Sato, and I really need to see my dad. He's probably worried about me." "Your father works here?" Marcus asked. Emma shook her head. "He doesn't work here. He lives here. In the big cell with all the scary barriers?" Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. "Cell Block 7? "Yeah," Emma said simply. "That's where they put Dad after the war ended." The security guard looked like he was about to faint. Marcus dropped his tablet and it clattered on the metal floor. Sarah stared at this small human child who claimed that the most dangerous being in the galaxy was her father. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "That thing in Cell Block 7 is an alien war criminal. It's a dragon." Emma's expression didn't change. "Dad's not a thing. And yes, he's a dragon. But he's still my dad." Before anyone could stop her, Emma walked past the bewildered guard and placed her small hand on the biometric scanner. To everyone's shock, it beeped acceptance. The massive blast doors began to cycle open with a deep mechanical groan. "Wait," Sarah called out, but Emma was already walking into the facility's depths with the confident stride of someone who knew exactly where she was going. The staff exchanged panicked looks. A human child was walking directly toward the most dangerous creature in the facility, and she claimed it was her father. Sarah grabbed her emergency communicator and activated the facility-wide alert. "All staff to emergency stations. We have a code yellow situation in progress. Civilian has breached containment protocols and is approaching Cell Block 7. They followed Emma at a distance, ready to activate emergency barriers at the first sign of danger. The girl walked through corridors that had seen grown soldiers tremble, humming a soft tune that echoed off the metal walls. When they reached the observation deck for Cell Block 7, Sarah expected to see the girl stop and stare in awe or terror at the massive dragon. Instead, Emma pressed her face against the viewing window and smiled. "Hi, Dad," she called out, her voice carrying through the intercom system. "Sorry I'm late. The transport from Earth took longer than expected." Inside the cell, the dragon froze, its 6 burning eyes fixed on the observation window, and for the first time since its capture, the creature went completely still. The constant rumbling of its movements ceased, and an eerie quiet filled the containment area. Then something impossible happened. The dragon's fearsome expression softened. Those eyes that had burned with rage and hatred now showed something else entirely: recognition, relief, and what could only be described as joy. The creature moved toward the window with careful, delicate steps, as if afraid that sudden movement might shatter what it was seeing. When it reached the barrier, it lowered its massive head until it was level with the small girl on the other side. Emma placed both hands against the transparent aluminum, and the dragon mirrored the gesture with one enormous claw. The barriers that separated them hummed with enough energy to vaporize a small moon, but the connection between the two beings was unmistakable. "I missed you too." "Dad," Emma whispered. Sarah watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous creature in the galaxy pressed its forehead against the barrier where a human child stood. The dragon's eyes closed, and what sounded like a purr rumbled through the containment system. "This is impossible," Marcus breathed. But Sarah was beginning to understand that when it came to humans, impossible was just another word for Tuesday. She had read the files on human adaptability, their strange ability to bond with other species, their capacity for love that transcended every barrier the galaxy could imagine. Looking at the dragon and the girl, separated by barriers that could withstand the fury of stars but connected by something stronger than any force field, Sarah realized that the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't captured a monster. They had torn a father away from his daughter. The dragon opened its eyes and looked directly at Sarah through the window. For the first time since its arrival, those burning orbs held no rage, no hatred. Instead, there was a plea, a desperate hope that someone might finally understand. Emma turned around and looked at the assembled staff. "Dad's been really sad since they brought him here," she said matter-of-factly. "He won't eat because he thinks I'm dead. The people who captured him told him I was killed in the bombardment of New Babylon." "But how?" Sarah asked, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. "How can a human child be the daughter of an alien dragon?" Emma smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a little girl excited to see her father. "That's a long story, but the short version is that Dad found me when I was a baby during the war. He saved me from the rubble of a destroyed colony ship and raised me as his own." Behind the barrier, the dragon nodded slowly, its eyes never leaving the girl who had walked fearlessly into the most secure facility in the galaxy to find him. "The war separated us," Emma continued, "but I always knew I'd find him again. Humans are really